Welcome back, everyone, to Educator Diaries with Maria and Chantel.
Hey, guys.
This is our part 2 series of Transition to School. Just a quick recap of episode 1 for those listeners who missed out. We covered the areas of school entry and different skill sets to confidently transition to school. But today, on today's episode, we will be covering choosing the right school for your child and what steps you can take in choosing the right school. We also have a look at some helpful tips to make your child's first day as easy as possible, as well as the settling in process. And we'll be finishing off with those dreaded lunch boxes, which we all love to pack. So stay tuned.
Yeah, we've also had some information from Raising Children's Network, so www.raisingchildren.net.au, and don't worry, we'll have that link on our website as well. So they've got some really good information across all areas actually on that website, so check it out, guys.
So when we're looking at the steps to take in choosing a school, there's 3 questions that you can ask yourself, and this will help you in your decision making. The first one would be, what do you want a school to do for your child? Second one, does your child have special language, education or other needs? And finally, is the location a factor in your school choice?
Yeah, so really in choosing your child's school, it can actually become a really personal decision. So decisions about where your child goes to school, it can be really difficult. It's a conversation obviously to have within your family. Don't get me wrong, we can always go to our friends for advice and things like that. But at the end of the day, it's your decision and it's got to come back to you, and it's about you getting it right. Like I said, get information from all your friends and family, but at the end of the day, you've got to make that decision for yourself.
Look, it's common for parents to feel anxious as well as the child. So the more relaxed you are, the more relaxed the child is.
Yeah, that's true. And there's lots of things out there that you can make your decision based off, whether it be a local state school. Sometimes the decision's taken out of your hands because schools sit within certain catchment areas, and if that's a state school, then that's a school that you have to go to. There are avenues that you can apply for out of school areas. Then there's also your independent and Catholic schools as well that you can choose from.
Yeah, look, most importantly too, that when you're looking at what do you want from a school for your child, are you looking for a school that has before and after school care?
Yeah, that's right. If you're a working family, that could be really important. And I know that some schools, even like for that before and after school care, if the school doesn't offer it themselves, you might need to look at other private B&As, and whether or not they have school pickups. Where does that before and after care service go and pick up with their buses and things like that, or is it a walking distance to before and after school care? So that's actually quite important as well. You've got to work in with what also suits your family's lifestyle and factors.
And look, and like Chantel said before, we all have our own decisions of what we think's best for our children, but looking at whether you want a school that's got great security, whether you want a school that's got a great curriculum or co-curricular activities, as well as transport, because you could, especially if you're going to a private school or sort of an independent school, it might be quite a distance away from your school, from your home. So having that transport and local...
It may not be walking distance and
exactly.
that as well. So
and also for religious reasons, affiliation with the school. So it's so important that, if that's what's your priority, of the religious side of it, well then that's where, unfortunately you're not going to find the perfect school.
No, there's always going to be things within a school environment that you might go, I don't like that, or I don't agree with it. So at the end of the day, it comes down to the priorities of that school and the ethos as well. So, that it's got to align with your beliefs and prioritise what you want in a school as well. So, like sometimes, the facilities in the school has to support your child's learning, such as playgrounds, libraries, home language support, music programs, clubs or team sports. There's some schools that are right into those sort of things. They could be more sporting schools and you're like, yep, that's my child. They'd love that. Or no, my child's not into those sort of things. So what else do they do within the school, within those clubs? How accepting are they of all children within the school as well? So, yeah.
Look, another factor that my children used to love was the opportunities for parents and families to become involved in the school activities, whether it be reading groups, whether it be
Oh, yeah, those
cake
reading
stores.
groups, yeah.
Did you go and help out?
Oh, I was one of those mums. Yep, I was in the reading groups, and don't get me wrong, I actually really liked it because with the reading groups, it actually gave me an opportunity to meet all the kids in the class and who my kids were hanging out with as well. And it's like, don't get me wrong, I wasn't totally judgy because I think my kids were probably the ones that, pushed the boundaries that little bit. But it was really good. I got to know a lot of the kids in the class, and even today, like those children will come and see me, and say, "Hey, Mrs. Gilmore," blah blah blah, and so it's actually really nice. But a lot of those foundations were from those early years of getting to know the kids in the class and the children that my children were hanging out with. So
if you're one of those parents that love to be part of the school environment, which like I was, because it was so important, and just as you mentioned, to know what was happening within your school, look for a school that does. Enjoys parent involvement, because some schools don't have that interaction, and so that might not be the right school for you. So there's so many factors that you need to take into account when looking at the correct school for you.
Yeah, and sometimes it could even be to do with the school size and the numbers of children enrolled. So I myself went to a really, really small primary school. I went to quite a few primary schools, to be honest with you, and that my parents moved around a little bit. But I remember going from one school that was quite large to the school that I finished in year 5 and 6 was really, really small. It was a one-stream school.
Right.
And it was beautiful. Like, don't get me wrong, everyone got to know each other. But there were downsizes to that too, because in the sense if I had a fallout with any of the girls in the class, or, how kids can be, then there wasn't really that opportunity to just go, oh, well, you know what, I'm not playing with you today. I'm going to go and play with this group of girls, because there's really only one group of girls. So, it's the yin and the yang of those sort of things as well. So, and sometimes those smaller schools can't as many activities as some of those larger schools can as well. So, I think sometimes it's a bit like, even realistically, when you're looking for a childcare centre, when you walk into a school, you've got to get that feel. You get that feel with the teachers, with the principal, and even sometimes the office staff are a really good point of call, just to feel the vibe of the school.
Oh, well, do you remember when we used to have those nights with the parents, transition to school nights? The first thing we used to say, you'll know as soon as you put that one foot into the school, you'll know in your heart if this is the right place.
Yeah, are they accepting of you and your child as well?
Not looking at the beauty of it and how it's built, you'll get that feeling. And when you've got that feeling, you know that you belong there.
Yeah.
Because
it's not all about the facilities and what they've got and what they can offer. Sometimes, they may have, the best halls and the best this and the best that, but if
it doesn't feel right.
Yeah, that's right. And if the teachers are unhappy there and they're going to move on, or they don't have that good principal there, it can really make a big difference as well. So
look, I know so many parents worry about, my child goes to a private school and they're so costly. The amount of money that's involved in going to private schools.
Yep.
And there are some very good state schools out there.
Oh, 100%. I actually worked in a state school as an SLSO, and I can say hands down it's a beautiful school. Fantastic headmaster principal, and and it was a really community involved school as well. So
yes, private schools aren't the be all and end all for your schooling life for your child. You find a school that suits you for your child and it's you as a family. And because every school has strengths that will enhance your child's experience.
Yeah, so, that's right. That's right.
Look at it that sort of way. But as we move on, we talk about some schools also have open days. Those open days are very crucial days. It's the opportunity for you to go and take your child to visit the school. Because apart from your decision making, children have a good vibe of where they would like to belong also, making them part of the process.
Yeah, and that is also a really big part of the transition to school thing, is that if you can, expose your child to that school, as many times as possible, especially if it's your first child and they've, obviously if it's your second child and you've got an older sibling that already goes there, perfect, because they will go for those pickups of the afternoon and get to see the playground and become more familiar. I know you probably can't be a stalker and just, go and hang out at the school at 3 o'clock and stuff like that. Don't think that really happens.
No.
But like through those open days, or if there are events or fates or anything like that that some of the other schools might have, go there and feel the vibe of that school. And so your child has had the opportunity to be in that environment as many times as possible to see how they feel, especially once you have maybe made up your mind that that's the school for you. Then try to have as many opportunities, even if it's just walking past the school on a weekend. Oh, that's where you're going to go next year. Oh, look at that. They've got some new equipment in the playground, or they've got this, or they've planted that tree. The more that you can help your child become familiar with that school, the better they're going to transition there as well and feel comfortable. So
so have a look at their websites.
Yeah.
And most schools now have got their own Facebook pages too, which is, and they post all their open days that'll be happening. And look, I know sometimes on weekends it's impossible to get to, all these open days, but probably the most crucial, if really you've got your heart set on a school, don't ignore their enrolment dates.
No, yeah.
Look, they vary from Catholic to private to independent to states. They've all got their own sort of structure in place. So it's so important that you have a look at that specialised school that you're wanting to go to and see what their enrolment process is.
And sometimes too, just keeping in mind, sometimes with those independent schools, the enrolment dates can actually start from birth. Sometimes they have waiting lists as well.
Crazy.
And you might need to put your name down and pay a deposit. To go to those schools as well. So keep that in mind. It's not necessarily just the year before school. Sometimes that process has to start even earlier on.
Well, remember, we used to have some mothers at our preschool that they were pregnant.
Yeah.
And they had their children's name down already at a school. That's just absolute madness. But if that's where you think your heart's set on, I'm going, well, that's what you got to do. And unfortunately, the school's putting that pressure on parents. It can become very overwhelming for the other parents thinking, I haven't done that yet, what have I done? And I used to say to a lot of parents also that don't worry, it's great to listen to others. It's great to listen to friends and say, what do you think of that school? What do you make out? What do they do?
But everyone will always talk up their own school as well.
Exactly.
Realistically, no one really, not that many people will bag their school and go, blah, 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 because why would you be there? If you don't like the school. They might tell you some negative stuff because really all schools, may have, some good, some bad stuff and what have you. And it's just, again, like we said, it's up to you to prioritise if that's, important to you or not.
Yeah, stay in your own lane. What works for you as a family and for your child, that's what's most important. It's great to listen because, sometimes someone can share some valuable, information to you.
Yeah, definitely. And they might say, oh, well, actually, I'm there so I know that they do this, this and this, and the school may not advertise that for whatever reason. So, and it's also a bit like when it comes to academic performances, like some people do get really hung up on the NAPLAN things or results or performances with arts and what have you. Again, you can look into it and make an informed choice, but just remember that sometimes those things that are posted on government websites and things like that don't really give the full picture as well.
That's exactly right. So when you've found your initial school and you go, right, this is where we're going, and it's great place and you're happy with their structure and you're happy with all the activities they provide and so forth, and you've got the enrolment form going, these are just some helpful tips of making that first day of school as easy as possible for your child, because as we've all been there, separation anxiety is one thing that I think we've all been and experienced for our children and our children experience. So doing these helpful hints will lessen the blow of, your child feeling that way. So first of all, what we could do, visit the school together, go on the grounds, go on the, sometimes during the day during school term, they'll have orientation days.
Yeah, and I know, especially lots of schools do have like a transition to school program that they may run on, I know, for instance, maybe Wednesday between 9 and 10 in the morning and stuff like that.
Yep.
Generally, I think they do it in term 4. So again, by then you would probably know which school that you're going to. Also, just quickly, going back to the age thing sometimes too, I used to say to parents, even if if you're hesitant, you're not sure whether or not you're going to send them, okay, if they're a borderline child or you're not 100% sure, you know what, you can always put your name down and get to this part in the year, the end part of the year, and then you can always choose not to send them as well. So, that way, you can go through these orientation things and then you might go, you know what, no, I want to hold them back or whatever. But it doesn't hurt to put your name down and to start the orientation and the enrolment process as well. So just keep that in mind. But, definitely when you visit the school together, those orientation days, make sure you include your drink, like that they know how to use the taps and toilets and stuff like that, because sometimes if they forget their water bottle, knowing how to use those bubblers, like even if it's not like it's not the easiest skill to learn. I
haven't used a bubbler in years.
Oh, they still have the bubblers, let me tell you. And even, again, there's that strength in those hands to turn those bubblers on and then coordinate that with, putting your mouth over it and all the rest of it. So,
and again, if you're using the after-school facilities, go visit the before and after school, because it's a bit overwhelming for your child to go somewhere, one place in the morning, and then having to travel over to some schools. Some after school and before schools are located within the school. Some of them are across the road. So that's a big thing for a little preppy or a little kindergarten to have to move from one area to another, to start the day. So that's important to visit those facilities also for your children.
And even like sometimes if you are able to visit the school during hours when the other children are there, obviously, so they're getting used to those big students. There's a massive size difference between those kindergarten kids and those year 6 kids, like they're huge. So sometimes even them being there in the same environment, them like looking up and going, oh, it's really quite intimidating for them as well. So,
again, what we talk about, children sort of, being familiar with, the school and being familiar with their, before and after school care, but the uniform.
Oh, yeah, that's a biggie. Yeah.
Get your child to try on the uniform.
Actually, just try and be a bit more organised than what I did, I got the uniform, but then I remember dressing Lincoln on the first day, and his socks, his long school socks matched they met his shorts, and then I realised that he looked like he had a onesie on, like it was. So I remember the next day I had to racing out to like one of the uniform shops to buy him a shorter, like smaller pair of shorts. I thought they looked all right, but I just didn't really quite try it on altogether, I think. So second child, you see.
If you have the third child, my goodness, go have your hands down.
Yeah, have the hand-me-downs, yeah.
But look, make sure everything fits. But at the same time, making sure your child's got their bags, their hats, their library bags. Remember all those things? Oh,
yeah,
gosh.
And maybe get them to wear those school shoes a little bit before they actually start on the day.
Yes.
I know we want everything nice and pristine, ready for that first day of school and those photos, but let me tell you, those poor kids, they're putting on those pair of school shoes, whether they be joggers or whatever, chances are they still could hurt their feet and stuff like that. So, those sort of kind of things you may actually need to wear in a little bit as well. So...
One thing that I found really comforting in a sense for my children was they did attend a private school, and they used to send out a letter just before we started school with introducing the teacher that they will be having. And it was lovely talking to my children about, this is who you've got, and saying the person's name, making them familiar with that name. So when they turn up on that day, whether it was day of... did you have book collection? Remember the book collection day? We used to have book collection day that you'd go in, all the books that you ordered would be there ready on your desk, ready to pick up. And that's when you met the teacher, and you collected all your books ready to come home so we could contact.
Oh, the contact.
Oh, my goodness me. Get ready, people. You need contact. But now they make book covers.
Yeah. I was going to say they've evolved and that over over the days that there are some really good book covers out there and things like that as well. So I think gone are the days of putting a poster and contacting a poster from the Smash Hits magazine.
Hilarious.
So again, ask the school what they need. Some schools might require you to bring in a box of tissues, some glue, whatever. Some might say, no, we've got it all ready for the kindergarten kids. Generally, you might need an art smock or a library bag or something like that. But again, the key thing is labels. Label everything. Because let me tell you, these things are expensive. And, if you don't have their things labelled and they go missing, then, like the whole no hat, no play thing, like it's enough to devastate a child.
Again, going back to our episode 1 that we talked about transition to school, I spoke about child recognising their name.
Yeah.
Labelling all your children's things, but making sure they recognise their name.
Yeah.
So when they've got rulers or they've got hats or they've got their library bags, and, all schools have their own sort of, uniform, same bag, same library hat. So distinguish that amongst 300 kids in the playground.
That's right.
So it's so important that you still, you label everything for them to make life a little bit easier, so they're not so anxious about where did my hat go. The amount of hats that I bought. Oh.
Yep. I even had one embroidered and it still went missing. I don't know how that happened, but anyway, someone obviously unpicked the name of Gilmore off the back of that hat. So, but again, just before they start, if you do know another child that's going to that school, sometimes I know at the preschool we would actually put up all the names, we'd put up the names of the local schools or ask the parents to put your child's name and then write the school that they're going to. So we could actually say, oh, good, you've got a friend, blah, blah, blah. If your child doesn't have any friends going, that's okay. They will be fine. They will make friends. The schools are really, really good at setting up buddy systems and things like that. But if they do know someone that's going to the school, try and organise a play date before the start of the school, even in that January time to say, such and such is going to your school. We're just going to meet up at the park. You don't have to go to anyone's houses or whatever. Sometimes social media is really, really good, that you'll see parents actually put something out, a post on on the school page or even on the local mum's page saying, my child's going to this school. I know that was a really big thing for a lot of those COVID children that didn't get to do any of this orientation stuff before school. Parents were trying to organise play dates at parks to say, hey, you know what, that's such and such. On your first day, there'll be that familiar face. So, so that's a really good thing to try and do as well if possible. So, yeah.
Well, then let's move on to settling in. Once they're at the school, we're going to settle in.
Oh, and the separation anxiety. And that's
it all begins.
Yeah. And even when you think that your child, is confident and ready to go, just expect there could still be those little tears that just might just slip out and then, just break your heart and,
Well, I mean... Let's not talk about just the children being upset crying. It's the parents who go back to their cars and start crying, especially for the first-time parents.
Yeah, and try not to show those emotions to your kids, really.
Exactly. By the time you get to your third child, you're like, okay.
I'm going for coffee.
Oh, goodness me. But during the first few weeks of your child, you will need to support them in various ways.
Yeah. So, really make sure, number one, to pick them up on time. If you're late, that could actually help them, not help them or actually make them quite anxious and stuff. So, Maria.
Yeah, that's right. I remember what I did, again, speaking about the third child. Look, Chanel was very confident to go off to school. She was happy and excited. I was excited that she was going off to school because I knew she was ready for it. And we had just moved up to Queensland and they call it prep there. And the first day I was supposed to pick her up at 2:30 before school finished.
Oh, yeah, because that's right. Be aware of that, people, because sometimes the school doesn't finish at 3 for that first term. Sometimes
exactly.
They do an earlier finish for the kindergarten kids. Yeah,
because I had my other two at the school and they would have been finishing at 3, but I had Chanel finishing at 2:30. But I just felt free for that day with Mum, and we went off shopping, and it was 2:15 and I was half an hour away from where I had to be to pick her up, and I had forgotten to pick her up.
Oh, you're one of those mums.
How embarrassing. Lucky my brother lived in the area and I quickly rang him to pick her up, and I can't believe I missed her first day of pickup, and up to this day now she's finished school. She says to me, how did you do that, Mum? How did you even think about forgetting that I was there? But I think it was just,
Oh, you do. You get caught up in the emotions of the day, and true. Like sometimes, once you get over those few initial tears, it's like, oh my God, this is amazing. But no one really tells you how fast that 9 to 3 goes.
Oh, yeah, that's what happened that day.
Blink.
Yeah.
You think that you've got all this time, but then you blink and the day's gone, and you're like, oh my gosh, it's time to turn around and go back to school as well. So, but yeah.
And another part of this settling in press, which you have to take into account, that your child, especially the first week. You know, they're grumpy and they're tired.
Oh, they're exhausted, yeah.
You know, like I said, some children don't go to kindy, but some children only go to kindy twice a week or three times a week. But here the children are going 5 days a week, full-on days.
And in hot weather, like in Australia, really, our kids go back to school and it's normally stinking hot, and you know they're in the playground 9 times out of 10. The teacher's like, no, out you go, out into that playground. So yeah, because they want them out to burn off some energy as well. So yeah.
But just look, the children can be physically drained, but also mentally drained because they're learning routines. They're learning. That it's a more structured environment. There's a lot more pressure on them, expectation that's expected from them, and so look, I mean, as adults, when you start a new job, it become very draining that first week of trying to get everything in and soak it all up. Just remember, your child feels exactly the same, but let's tenfolds.
Yeah, and not only that, sometimes too the hype. We've hyped it up so much for them. Oh my God, you're going to school, you're going to have so much fun, you're going to have this. So sometimes their expectation, it may not meet their expectations. So all of a sudden these children are like, hang on a tick, this is meant to be this is meant to be that. And and they come down, and that sometimes when, after the first few days of them having fun, they might turn around and go, oh, no, I don't want to go. I don't want to go anymore. I'm done.
The novelty's over.
Yeah.
Now this is all too hard for me.
So just be kind, just still talk to them, have those conversations with them and say, it's okay. You know what? You're going to have a great day. I'm going to speak to your teacher, and keep those lines of communication open with the teachers. You may not have the same access to teachers as what you do to your childcare educators. Generally, you'll maybe only have that contact in the morning and afternoon pickups. Some teachers,
Some schools you only can email the teacher.
Well, I was going to say that's another great form, and some schools will have the apps and things like that as well. So check with your school about the communication and how the best way is to communicate with teachers and what have you. So
because the last thing a teacher wants is 30 parents
of an afternoon trying to have a chat,
bombarding them.
They don't have time for that either. So because they could be needing to leave to go and pick up their children from school as well. So the other thing too, just to be aware of with settling into schools, is be aware of the traffic around schools and the lack of parking. Sometimes you think, oh yeah, cool, 3 o'clock, I'll be there at 5 to 3, and then you're driving around and around and around, and there's no parking. Let me tell you, some parents get there at 2 o'clock. They'll sit in their car and read a book.
I know.
You may not have that time to do that, so try and just ask the school as well if they do, when they start maybe doing the kiss and drop. Or some schools will have the children there with their teacher until a certain time. Like it could be 3:15, it could be 3:30. So you may be able to time your pickups a bit better as well. So just keep that in mind as well when you're chatting to the teachers in the school about those drop-off and pick-up times as well. So
I think we mentioned this before in our episode 1 in regards to communication with your child, keeping that language happening, and ways that you can sort of introduce that at an earlier stage before they go off to school. Be involved in your child's day. So when they get home, sit down with them, talk to them, ask them how they feel, ask them how their day was. So important, and as they go on through school, they might tell you that they might be teased, they might be bullied. Take that as a serious message, because, not all children will say that if they're not feeling that in the playground. And I know each school has their own bullying, what's the word?
Policies
policies as such. But as a parent, you need to advocate for your child. If your child's unhappy, and generally they're not unhappy when they're socially around children, well, there's something could be happening at school. Make that well known to the school, or either email the school so the child knows that you're being proactive in the way they're feeling.
Yeah, you're on their side.
That's exactly right. So, and look, sometimes it could be just an incident that happened in the playground. Well, you don't know until you find out, and so be it. That's it.
Yeah, and you can unpack that conversation with the child, and then they feel like, oh, okay, mum's listened to me, dad's listened to me, grandma, whoever is there in the house to listen, and then they can feel validated and move on and be okay with that. So
we'll have a separate podcast about bullying and in schools and so forth, because I'm over it, and it's sad to see children being part of it. But we'll leave that for another time. But we're going to finish off with the
dreaded school lunches.
Oh.
Yeah, I have to say that I used to love school holidays. only
Yes.
because I didn't have to worry about the school lunches and the early pickup and the early wake ups as well. Sometimes
You and
kids-
everybody else.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness me. Just having that organised and what to put in the lunchbox and...
And now, let me tell you, I know of, a few weeks ago there was controversy about a dad saying, no, I'm going to take back my child's lunchbox and blah, 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 blah. And lots of parents are like going, yeah, it's up to us to choose. And that's fine. I get it, but you've also got to understand from a teacher's point of view, they have to have guidelines that they have to meet as well. I know in childcare centres that we have to, we're really not really allowed to let the children have a lot of junk food and things like that.
No.
So I'm sure that teachers have got that same guidelines that they've got to encourage
And promote healthy eating. Exactly.
Yeah. And, and that's all good for parents to say, yeah, I want them to have whatever I want them to have. That's fine. But also think about that teacher that's had a child that's had a sugar rush or a sugar high coming into that classroom, disrupting everybody else. So sometimes those lunchbox guidelines are there for a reason. I get it, parents sometimes are time poor, money poor and things like that. That's okay, but just be mindful of maybe working with your teachers and saying to them, this is like, let me know, like what's everyone else having, give me some ideas. So we've got a few little ideas here that we'll also pop these ideas on our website as well, because Munch and Move, a lot of childcare centres actually use the Munch and Move program.
Yep.
But have a look on the Munch and Move site as well. They give some really good ideas on healthy kids
Eating.
Eating and
Just
stuff like that.
also remember too that some schools, and I remember back when my kids were at school, it was a nut-free school. Now I think they call it
allergy aware.
Allergy aware.
Because
So
I think schools realise that you can't 100% guarantee a nut-free environment, or it's not just nuts now. There's lots of other allergies that children suffer from as well. So allergy aware, and that's okay. I know it's frustrating. You think, oh well, my child likes this and my child wants that, but at the same time, just be aware that could be a really life-threatening thing for someone else's child.
Firsthand,
Yeah, like
your
my
son.
son's anaphylactic, and it's don't get me wrong, as a parent, it's a pain in the backside because there's so many things that he can't eat, and I was very lucky that so many of his friends and the families were really supportive of that as well. So because children do share lunch stuff, like they do, and that's just
the
part of going
innocence
to
of
school.
them of sharing, and we encourage sharing. We encourage sort of to be together and respect one another, and but it becomes a very serious matter. And like I said, firsthand, you've experienced that. Be aware of that, and whatever the schools have in place for their eating under their banner of what lunches are acceptable, not acceptable in the school.
Yeah, so even like I know we've come a long way from the Vegemite sandwich in the in the
good
bag
old Vegemite
squashed.
sandwich.
I don't even think I had a proper lunchbox, yet alone a cold pack in my lunchbox going back in the day, and that. But there's so many different things out there now. There's like rolls, there's pita bread, there's the lavish bread, roti, and even like sometimes like the fruit bread, and I know my children even had some of the what are they called, the thermos things.
Oh yes, little thermos.
You can like with pasta and rice and stuff like that in there as well. So
look, I just be mindful, what your child would like to eat. I mean, I've seen some really healthy lunch boxes, and I've seen some actual lunch boxes that are like
that you want to eat yourself.
Yeah.
Like going, I know. We had a child
my
at the school I was working at. We'd every day be like, oh, I wonder what he's got in his lunchbox today.
Goodness me. I was a very dedicated mother, and you know what? So be it. And that's what, she thought was right for her child, and I thought, give me one too.
Yeah.
But at the same time too, it's, don't overload your child, because when they open up their lunchbox and they're overwhelmed with so much food happening in there, it can be like, I'll just have one thing and nothing else, because it's so overwhelming.
Yeah, I know
them.
some like one advice I remember giving to some families was sometimes you can, if you can fit it, have two lunch boxes. So you can tell your child this is for
recess
or first snack
break,
or whatever it is,
morning
and first
tea.
break, and and the second one. So they understand, that they don't eat, especially kindergarten kids may eat everything in that first
and they
break.
think they have to do that. Exactly.
Yeah. So, again, explain that to them, that this is your first one, this is your second one.
I love the schools that have, after they start half an hour in the morning, they have a fruit break.
Yeah.
And that to start off the day. And I think that's pretty good.
Yeah, that is a really good idea as well.
Encourage that.
Yeah.
And because you know what? Children follow other children, you know, and it's like, oh, wow, I didn't know they could eat, you know, they never ate apples before, but all of a sudden, you know, little Johnny's eating it and so everybody else decides to jump on the bandwagon. I want an apple for school, you know?
Yeah. And there's other, like with the, I can't remember what they used to call it. Yeah, it was like a healthy snack or whatever to start the day. So you've got, you know, you've got carrots, celery, you know, cucumber sticks, sometimes those cherry tomatoes, like even some beans I've seen, like corn, capsicum, broccoli, all those sort of things. And you'll find a lot of the children who do go to childcare have been exposed to lots of those raw fruits and vegetables as well. So again, check with your childcare centre and say, does my child eat this? Because sometimes what they eat at preschool, they may not eat at home. So you even with your range of fruits and stuff like that, so your apples, bananas, strawberries, whatever's in season, you know, you can source as well, which is really, really good, and that's so for that healthy snack. So don't forget to add some protein into their lunch boxes as well. That can really, even just some, you know, I used to sometimes just buy barbecue chicken shredded up in the fridge, and then that was just an easy, like, grab a handful of chicken and chuck it in the lunchbox as well. So that was already shredded. It was quick and easy. I remember Paris used to like it as what she'd call it a platter. So she'd have a bit of meat, she'd have some cheese in there, she might even have some crackers and stuff like that. So she felt like she was having, you know, like a platter as such. And
my kids used to love a little treat that I'd put in there, you know, whether it was a little LCM bar, there's all those little packet things. But, you know, because they're at school and you just think, well, and again, following the guidelines.
Yeah, depends if the school let you, have that sort of stuff. And that's so.
And, but, you know, and multicultural food, like, you know, encourage your child if that's what your child eats at home, you know, nothing better than a piece of Lebanese bread with
a bit of butter rolled up and
exactly. Like when I was at school, I didn't want to take the Italian roll which has got the salami and the prosciutto, but now anybody would die for a sandwich like that at school.
And even like just some of the leftovers from dinner. You know, if your child likes that, you know, even like if you've made some like chicken schnitzels or something like that, you know, or even the pasta or something like that, pack that up. Ready to go for the next day. But
keep in mind, you can't be asking teachers to heat them up in the microwave.
No. But sometimes there's certain things that you can have cold the next day.
For sure,
I quite like a chicken schnitzel cold the next day, just saying. Not into the pizza, but, you know, like the chicken schnitzel, I don't mind.
But if you can, and again, I think you mentioned too, like when you're providing yogurts and custards and cheese and milk, put an ice pack in.
Yeah. And even, again, too, one way of getting your children to eat these lunches, involve them in it. What do you want? You show me. You help me. Come to the shops with mum or dad and pick out those things, you know, or tell me what your friends have got and I might be able to add them into the, you know, into the thing. Also, don't forget to cut some of the large fruit and veggies up into smaller pieces because some children may, you know, if they're not used to eating a whole apple, you know, in one big chunk type thing.
But also too, at that age, they start losing their teeth.
Yeah.
You try munching on a big apple.
Well, that's true
with
too.
Two teeth missing at the front.
Yeah.
You know, and we all experience this too because at the first, first term is quite, overwhelming for a child. And look, with Jaden, it took, I don't know how long it took for him, but he didn't eat anything. Absolutely anything at school. He'd come jump in the car
and ravage the lunchbox.
And that was just him. It was a part of just that nervousness of being at school. But I ensured that he had a good breakfast.
Yeah, and that's probably really important
before he
as well.
Went off, you know? So,
and some schools do have breakfast club as well. So look into that as well. So, you know, like that there's, like I said, that's all part of the thing. You've really got to make sure that your child eats a really good breakfast. I know some children don't, so therefore you've got to look at what that first snack's going to be as well. So
that's exactly right. And a big cheer out to those schools that do provide breakfast for those young children who unfortunately, you know, miss out on breakfast. And
for whatever reason, sometimes parents do send them there because they've got to drop them early to go to work and stuff. But
the teachers who give up their time voluntary to do that, I think it's amazing. So thank you guys. She's doing an amazing job for that. And I know that's just worldwide that, you know, a lot of schools introduced this breakfast for children. But those schools that have the lunches provided for the children. You know, they serve the food for the kids. I would have loved that for my kids. She's 13 years of making lunch boxes. That was a nightmare.
Yeah, no, I think we all lived vicariously through those American movies of those cafeterias and stuff, didn't we?
Exactly. Oh my goodness. But you know what? Make it simple, not too much. Don't know these Fandoogle type, lunch boxes that your child can't even open.
Yeah. Get them to unwrap the cling wrap or the bags or whatever it is that you're going to pack them in as well. So really important for those few little tips and that. So
that's it. That's right. Well, anyway, thanks again.
Well, hopefully you've found some helpful tips out of this last podcast as well. So, but like I said, we'll have some other links on our website that, can give you some more information on that as well. So
as we go, I'm going to leave you with this inspiring quote. Each day brings new possibilities and experiences. You take care. Bye now.
See you guys. Ciao, ciao.